All right, and welcome everybody to Your Healthy Self with Reagan and crew and the entire team. Really happy to have you guys here today because this is a show that's going to be one for the ages. So something that you can listen to over and over again. I believe the content that is going to be shared today is something that will be just as relevant 20, 50, even 100 years from now. So I know it's a bold claim, and it's a bold claim because this is another podcast, another show that I recorded with my mentor, Dan Sullivan, earlier this week. And so we will be playing the recorded version of this, but feel free to ask questions. I'll be here as you listen to the conversation because Dan Sullivan, just to give you a little bit of background, he's the founder and president of Strategic Coach. People call him a visionary and innovator. I call him the Lao Tzu of entrepreneurism. As many of you know, I am a healthcare entrepreneur and have many irons in the fire, and am constantly innovating with scientists and doctors and growing clinics, and we've teamed up with Anodyne Pain and Wellness, and that's been a phenomenal growth stage for us. But in that process, I need somebody to keep me grounded and to remind me of the way that needs to have things that need to happen and maintain energy and maintain purpose and vision. And so he's just been phenomenal in that. He's a gifted conceptual thinker. He has over 40 years of experience, and his interesting goal that he's tasked me to help him with about 5 years ago is to keep his longevity going, because he has got a goal to live to be 156. And some of you are like, oh, no one's ever lived to be that old. Well, probably not. And he says, well, if I don't have a big enough goal and really set the future, really plan for a big future, then he loses excitement for life. And so he's got this really interesting way of thinking about things. And so what's going to happen is, you'll hear this recorded version. And Dan, he's got a strong belief in and a commitment to the power of the entrepreneurism and the power of innovation and collaboration. Him and his wife, Babs Smith, they do come out to the clinic and receive care, and it's been just phenomenal working with them. And so, without further ado, we will play the recorded version of this. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and really appreciate you guys being on this. Dan, it's so nice to have you back on the show after about a year of not having you on, and now we're coming up on your birthday. This is number 77, is that correct?
77, yeah. In a couple of weeks, I'll be 77, yeah.
And this last trip around the sun, what's been some of the biggest breakthroughs you've had in your personal journey?
Well, it was a unique year. I've had, a lot of decades and a lot of years, but I have to say, just from the standpoint of changes that we made during the past year, but also just observing, how the entire world, I can't remember an event that was so global in terms of its impact, and I was born, if you go back 77 years, it was 2 weeks before the Normandy invasion, one of the crucial, you know, crucial events of the Second World War. And, lots of other things have happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s. But I have to tell you, I can't remember something, and here's my test for this, Reagan, that in the future, probably next 15, 20 years, you'll be able to go anywhere in the world and you'll immediately have something to talk about with strangers that you meet.
Yeah.
And in other words, how was the pandemic for you? What was the lockdown? And total strangers will be able to talk for a half hour, an hour about what their experience was. And probably I can't remember until back to the, Second World War, when people would have that type of experience that they could talk about in common, for positive or negative, but they would have very, very strong feelings about what happened to them during the past year. And I think that fact alone is going to have some interesting, I think, and unpredictable transformations in the world, that we kind of, for the first time, had something that happened to everybody together. Maybe an asteroid, a potential asteroid hit, or a UFO or something that was proven. Yeah. But it was, for us, we made progress, I would say 10 years progress, in moving into the virtual world that we simply made in about 6 months. And that, short of the negative event that caused this, I don't think we would have gotten there in 10 years. Our use of Zoom and use of virtual workshops and entirely new kinds of services that we could create. So, I have to tell you, I loved it.
And you're still there in Toronto. You have not crossed the Canadian border in here, which is, I mean, you're someone who crosses.
We're more locked down. We're more locked down in Canada. Canada is like a really big U.S. state. I mean, population-wise, it's not as big as California, and Texas has an economy that's bigger than the Canadian economy. So I call it America's biggest gated community. Like you have to check in at the gate. You have to. They want to know if you're bringing booze in or if you're bringing cigarettes in. You can't bring a gun in. You have to know somebody. They have to be able to check that you're there legitimately. But they operate more on a national basis. In the United States, it's 50 countries, and each of the states adjusts differently. Right. But one of the great winners, I think, in the American scene has really been Utah and Salt Lake City.
Man, our commercial real estate market is going crazy. My office, you've been to my office there in Salt Lake. That is about an acre property, and we keep getting offers in on it. So it may not be there next time you show up. I may be in a new location because we pass up the offers.
Well, you're perfectly situated. Where it's like the state's made up of people who believe in working.
Yeah, we love to work. That's why we have
to save money and have lots of kids.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, we love our kids. We love to be thrifty and industrious. I mean, even our beehive, we're the Beehive State because, bees are always working, busy bee. And we're always planning for the future and never getting ahead of ourselves. And so it's proved to pay off, even in the 2008, 2009 market crisis. When the bubble burst on the real estate market, it didn't really impact us like it did other places. We tend to have this level of resiliency that. Yeah, it's fun. So I want to congratulate you too on your Who Not How book. I think we've given out. We bought 40 at the last event. I've referenced it often. You and Benjamin Hardy are just like a perfect mix. Like, talk about a collaboration there.
And there's a third member who's sort of in the background in that. Well, actually, two people, because it's Tucker Max, who's a great book packager, and he's a great book strategist. And Tucker, he comes in and he says, "You guys are a little bit off track," and this, you have to understand who your reader is and make everything. So we got Ben Hardy, who's a terrific he's what I would call a major market writer. He really, really understands how to write a major market book. And then Tucker Max, who is just a legend in the entrepreneurial book world, especially of helping entrepreneurs get books out. And he's got a wonderful company called Scribe. And then the publisher, Hay House from Carlsbad in California. And they have just switched in the last 5 years from being sort of a new age type of, publisher for that type of audience, and they moved over to the entrepreneurial market, and it coincided perfectly for us to go major market right when they were making the switch. So they kind of have used us as the launching pad, the strategic coach. And I think, right now we're in our 7th month of the book, and I think we're averaging about 20,000 sales per month. I think we're up to about 140, and we're looking at the results. Ben knows how to look at the Amazon results especially, and say, well, I want to tell you what these numbers mean. But he said, without any real major marketing, except for kind podcasts like the one that you're giving me today, we're averaging about 100 book sales a day. It just goes right along, and it seems it's about 3,000 books a month, and it just goes out there. But people are phoning in. We're getting signups for the coach program, so that's really the purpose. I'm not writing books to make money on books. I'm writing books to introduce strategic coach to entrepreneurs who would find the program useful.
Yeah. Well, I found that concept so useful. I came in, I don't know if you remember, but Peter Diamandis, just following him, and then I got connected to your podcast, The Exponential Wisdom. And I was like, I love what Peter's saying, but Dan Sullivan has a lot more workable ideas. Sorry, Peter, if you hear this, but but I was like, man, this looks like something that would benefit me. And so I was really excited when I called, and I was like, how do I get in Dan's group? And then they put me on the wait list, and I finally got in about 6 months later, and it's just been an incredible journey. So I think Who Not How would have been another icebreaker for me, where I would have said exactly the kind of thinking that I need to keep my entrepreneurial spirits high.
Well, it's really funny. We were there's a really famous expert on influence by the name of Robert Cialdini. I don't know if you've ever read his book. And we were at a sister program to Strategic Coach, which is Genius Network, and this is Joe Polish. A great friend of ours, and also a great, collaborator. So I was in his program. Babs and I were there together on Thursday and Friday. And Robert Cialdini has a new book coming out, which is called PreSuasion. And this is where you're linking up with people who are like-minded. In other words, that you're finding the people in the world who are like-minded, and you can do that, of course, much more easily now that we have these great virtual platforms like Zoom. And he was really talking about the fact that we're now operating in networks of like-minded people, and that the whole thing is to really, really understand who it is that you have common ground with, and start using the language of common ground. And that's it's we're seeing that we're really doing this right now.
And so it's relating the common ground through language. So when we're with our peers,
well, think about it. I mean, entrepreneurs are a world to their own, a world in their own, and we now have capabilities to take our message not just locally, but not just regionally and nationally, but globally. And so you kind of have your own separate universes, and it's virtually unlimited because it's based on mindset. So a lot of the themes that you and I have talked about, Regan, constant growth, taking care of yourself physically, that in your 70s, you're equal to maybe 50 years ago what people were in their 40s, in terms of ambition and in terms of energy, and, being fully active in all areas of your life, but especially in your business life. I grew up, I'm kind of working class like you were. You grew up on a ranch. I grew up on a farm in northern Ohio, and ours, you were worn out by the time you were 50. I mean, physically, you were worn out, and there wasn't anything in your future that was going to be any different than your past, you know.
Right.
And but you know, um, my future, and what I'm working on right now looks incredibly not only bigger than my past, but bigger than everything I've done in my past. In the first 76 years, what's going to happen for me over the next 25 years is way, way bigger than what I've accomplished up until this moment.
And you've done that a lot through connecting with these peer groups, and
Mm-hmm.
you ask the questions. I mean, you've picked my brain on longevity ever since we've met, and I've tried to do my best at bringing you the knowledge that I've gained from other scientists. And so I see you as somebody who knows how to make those connections. And it's interesting because Robert Cialdini, for those of you who don't know, he wrote a book called Influence, and then another one called PreSuasion.
And this is called PreSuasion.
Now he's got PreSuasion, so I can't wait to read it. I was in Genius Network for about a year, and sat by him and met Robert and his wife, and they're just phenomenal people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited for that book to come out. And that concept is something that fits in really nicely with Who Not How. I'm sure.
Well, and the big thing is that it's really interesting, and I think that you've observed it where you are, and and I think all the entrepreneurs in strategic coach have observed it. But the educational system is really falling apart from the way it was. I mean, this year simply brought to light what had been hidden, but it just is not preparing young people at all for the world that they're going into. And the teachers are the worst examples. So many of the teachers are the worst examples of people who are kind of clueless about what's actually happening in the world. And so my sense is that whole new models are going to be created right now. I think it's a period of turmoil. I mean, it's not like things are going to smooth out next year or 12 months from now. I think we're in for maybe a quarter century or maybe a half a century of turmoil. And we've had those sort of things in the past. I mean, the whole history of the state that you're living in was the result of 50, 60 years of enormous turmoil, the frontier moving west in the United States. I mean, it was, you had to be very, very resilient back then. And I think people are going to have to be resilient again over the next 30 or 40 years.
No question about it. I mean, the Mormon pioneers, they wanted to set up a whole new society, right?
Yep. And did.
Saw that. They did. They succeeded. And Brigham Young, my hat's off to that guy. I mean, talk about leadership. He was a lion. But yeah, they did. They wanted something different, something better, something more transformative. And a lot of people disagreed with them. And I'm not going to say it was the right thing to do or the wrong thing. But I do love my culture and my history.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, they came out here with just kind of a concept and an idea. And when they landed here in the Salt Lake Valley, this is the place. This is the right place, is actually what he said. They knew they had finally made it, and then they created this amazing society. And I'm here, 150 years later, 160, and I'm reaping the benefits of what my great grandfather put in place and grandmothers for me. So see, I think what you're saying is, now we're all creating that same territory.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the world for a long time was in a framework that was set up by the United States at the end of the Second World War. Peter Zion, a great writer, that we've really recommended his books, and we have a event every year for the Free Zone people. It's a special event, and he came and spent about 3 or 4 hours with us and talking about it. But he said that basically for 50 or 60 years after the Second World War, we kind of lived in agreements that were made in 1944 about how world trade was going to go and who was going to provide the safety and the security in the country. And it came down to one big check writer, and that was the United States. And it came down basically to one people who was providing adult supervision for the whole world, and it was being paid for by American taxpayers, and it was being paid for by American workers. And it's over. The Second World War is over.
Right.
And it was to keep it was to prevent having to do a land war against the Soviet Union and Europe. That was the big reason, and they quit.
Right.
30 years ago, they just said, "Wow, we're folding," and everybody else was getting such a good deal because the U.S. was paying for so much and was providing protection for everybody. And now we want to work on the country. We want to work and build the country back up and start fixing everything up and taking advantage of new industries. And it's very entrepreneurial. And in spite of that, the U.S. grew.
Right.
In spite of carrying the burden for the rest of the world, the U.S. grew. But I think it's coming back now, and it scares the daylights out of the rest of the world.
It really does. And I don't know if you remember Boris Yeltsin when he came to the United States. He was there for a NASA trip, and then he went to a grocery store. He said, "Just drop me off at the local grocery store."
Yeah.
And he went in there and he said,
and he cried. He broke down crying.
He was just shocked. He said, "I don't have access to food like this. Neither does Mikhail Gorbachev. There would be revolution in the streets." And then he's asking him, "Well, who chooses, who's going to order the meat? Who's going to order the ham? It's just, America is like this great capitalistic society where, it's like, well, no, the government's not choosing every little thing that happens. It's the individuals who have trust in each other." And so what do you think the next level? Now that we have trust with a Zoom platform, I feel like I have grown in my confidence in doing, patient interactions over Zoom and teamwork over Zoom. I agree. It's not, like the Mormon pioneers came to Utah, and when we put our stake in the ground, now it's like, well, maybe there's this world above the physical geography that we're going to be operating in.
Yeah, well, I've got a new book. It went to press last week. This is one of my quarterly books, and it's called Zooming Ahead, and it's the 8 mindsets that if you're going to get the proper use out of Zoom, you have to have these mindsets. And the big thing is, this is not a communication medium, it's a transportation medium. And, in other words, who isn't making money if Zoom is making money? Well, all the other communication platforms are all making money, they're all growing. It's the transportation platforms that have been challenged and in some cases replaced by Zoom. And we've got it in the books that we're going to plan to reopen in-person workshops in October of this year.
Okay.
There are other forces, there are other higher forces that can change your plan, but you have to have a plan to even modify it. So we're going to have a plan, and we'll start in Chicago. Chicago is easier for us because I think that it'll be easier in Chicago. If the Canadian border is still shut down, that puts a crimp in your in your plans, but we don't know how it'll go because people have had 14 months where they can look at life in an alternative form, Yeah. And, you ask yourself, why was I doing all that traveling? There's lots of people, why am I running around and doing all this? Well, it was like it happened little by little over a 30 or 40 year period. Every year there was a little bit more push and a little bit more, but suddenly in one year it was all cut out and everybody had a chance to say, wow, what really means a lot to me that I didn't realize? When things go back, what am I not giving back?
Yeah.
And there's a certain amount of freedom. I mean, we have the 4 freedoms in Strategic Coach, and there's freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of relationship, freedom of purpose. And I think a lot of people just got really very conscious and very appreciative of the things that mean the most to them, and they're not giving it back afterwards.
I couldn't agree more. And the time that we've all saved. I mean, I've never been to some of the places in Utah that I've been, because I can do if I have a workshop now and we say, okay, this one's 100% virtual, my clients don't mind. And I can be on a trip with my family and say, hey, Friday morning, I'm off. You guys go do your thing and I'll catch up to you at noon. And nobody even knows. And I can be out there, and we had so many fun family memories in the last year that I would not have thought of, because I'm usually thinking, well, let's take the family on a trip to California, or let's go to Denver or somewhere else. And so,
or Maui or something.
We go to Hawaii a lot, yes.
Yeah.
And so it's been a really exciting experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everybody has to speak for themselves here, but I love Zoom, and I had worked with Zoom, as you had, for 5-6 years, so I was used to it, but there wasn't anybody at the other end, it's like having a telephone receiver, but it's the only one. It doesn't have much value. But when suddenly 500 million, Zoom went from 10 million to 500 million, 50 times in a 12-month period, all of a sudden the whole world is available to us. And our virtual, we have a thing called Virtual Global, and it's 6 workshops a year. It's every 2 months for 4 hours. And since September, we've had 200 signups, and it's full price, our normal full price. It's in US dollars, and and they love it. They love it. And we'll have workshops that have people from 20 different countries, 20, and it's what a world.
What a world. Yeah, I love the breakout groups, because it's like, where are you from, where are you at? We're all from all over, even Tanzania, New Zealand, Australia. I mean, this is it's an exciting time to be alive. And one of the interesting things I heard you talk to Shannon about in your Inside Strategic Coach podcast, that I was like, I really resonated with it, but and I've never heard you talk about this, but attention is your property. So this is something where, right now we just get blasted with all these.
This is my next book I'm writing. So I write a book a quarter. So when I was 70, Reagan, we had developed this process for creating little books. So they're less than 60 pages. They're illustrated. They have cartoons and everything, but they're single idea books. So you think about a book that you get, at a bookstore. It's a nonfiction book, and the person might have 10 ideas in the book. And I said, yeah, but if one of the ideas is good enough, why don't you just have a smaller book for it? So I've done that. And we have a lot of ideas that, are created out of the Strategic Coach program, because entrepreneurs are doing new things, and you have to have new ways of thinking about new things. So when I was 70, I said, I'm going to write 100 books in 100 quarters, and jumped into the deep end of the pool, and then had my team sort of, resuscitate me and get me just to do my part of it. But I can knock that off in about 35 hours now, with the help of writers and interviewers and artists and everything like that. But the next book we have, which I think might be it might catch on. I call it Your Attention, Your Property. And I said that I think that there's a lot of unhappiness today, because people don't realize that what they give their attention to is really crucial to their behavior. You know, it's really crucial to your enjoyment of life.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've seen nothing concerning social media that tells me that that's a good use of your attention. Now, I've never done it. I have to tell you, I'm completely I'm completely clueless here. I've never done Facebook. I've never done Twitter. I've never done anything. But I do know that all my success that I've had in life is that I got my attention and focused it on things that were really useful for me. And so I'm beginning to think that we're right about the stage where if people can reclaim their attention, and I think a lot of people have reclaimed their attention over the last year. So I think it's a message that will resonate with a lot of people who it might not have happened before the pandemic and the lockdown. But I think after the last 14 months, they said, yeah, there's lots of things that I used to pay attention to that I don't pay attention to. And I said, and if they're going to get my attention, so I said, okay, Mr. Zuckerberg, if you want my attention for 5 minutes, whatever money you make during those 5 minutes, I get a share of it.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I think that would scare him. I think that would scare him.
That might be the only thing that could scare him this day and age. But I think that's a genius concept. My Japanese teacher, Diane Musho, she said, your one true freedom in life is where you choose to focus your attention. So
yeah.
It's like, and you're a prime example of that. I go back to the wants. I can't remember how many years. I think you
wanting what you want. You
started in like 1978 or 1980, somewhere in there, and every day you just wrote down what you want. But
yeah, it was from. It was actually from. It was August of 1978 until New Year's Eve in 2003. So I said that every day for 25 years, I'm going to write in a journal what I want. Okay. And it could be just a sentence. So the minimum requirement every day was that you just write a sentence. And I did it. I missed maybe a dozen days during that period. And I just noticed that my life turned around because in 1978, I was both divorced and bankrupt on a single day. One in the morning, one in the afternoon. And it's like two really bad report cards on the same, relationship fail, business fail, I mean, for a man, you've kind of.
What else do you have?
Yeah, there isn't a third strike, that's
right,
two strikes and you're out. And I just got the feeling, that I had, Reagan, that I was not telling myself what I really wanted. I was depending on other people to tell me what I wanted. And I said, no. I said, I'll give it 20. I said, it took me about more than 25 years to get into this negative situation. So I'll give myself 25 years to get out. And I did. And my life had completely transformed. I found my true partner in life, Babs, who's my partner in life and partner in business, and created what is the perfect company for me. And everything improved. My health improved. My financial state improved. Just everything was better. And it just came from that attention, giving myself attention to a single focus for a 25-year period.
Man, what a concept. And then recently you've had over a year of no TV.
3. At the end of July, it'll be 3 years now. I haven't watched any television.
Already 3 years? That is.
Yeah, and I have to tell you the real test. I'm a lifetime Cleveland Brown fan.
Yeah.
Which, they've had a bad century up until last year. Since, they've lost their franchise. They got, they had bad things happen to them. And but they had a good year last year, and they were, and they're on the rise. But I didn't watch a minute of. I'll tell you how I did it. The next day, I'm an internet. I'm not off internet. I love the internet. Yeah. So the next day after they won, after the game, there's a 15-minute recap of the highlights. So I just watched the highlights, and it was even better. I knew that. I already knew the results, so it was more enjoyable.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So so I've gone 3 years, and I estimate I got 800 hours back a year for 3 years.
Wow. And so where's your attention going now that it's those 800 hours are freed up?
Well, I got a certain amount of slack in my system that I've decided that for example, in my schedule, I have schedulers who put things into I'm looking at it, on my computer, and they can't have any meetings closer than a half hour. So when I finish 1 hour, there has to be at least a half hour. I don't like being rushed. I don't like being pushed. And I said, I'm going to keep this in there that you can't fill up this time. And more and more, it's just creating new materials for our entrepreneurs. And, we have this developing third level of the program. We have signature, we have 10 times, and now we have the PreSuasion, and we're just past 3 years now, and it's really developing traction. We've had about we have 8 came in the last 2 months, 8 new people, and we've got it to the point where it's really easy to understand. The who, not how, did a tremendous amount for it, because that's really what the PreSuasion is that anything you're tempted to do something that's not your skill, or you're not, it doesn't give you any energy. You find a who loves that activity. And so your goals can be as big as you want them to be, as long as you're not doing the how to actually achieve the results. So that's a great breakthrough. And people said, and it's an easy, it's so funny, Amazon, we have about 850 reviews on Amazon for the book. Mm-hmm. And Robert Cialdini said that the sweet spot on the 5 stars is that you're between 4.2 and 4.7. He says if you're all 5s, it's not believable, and if you're less than 4, it's not a good score. But we're at about 4.6 out of 850 reviews. So I looked through, and one person gave a 1 star, and it was really negative. He said, what a waste. He said, everything you need to know is on the cover. I said, well, if that's the bad review, that's pretty good. Yeah. But you can see it in your own growth in Utah, how many who's you have now.
Oh, it's incredible. And just to kind of update you, some of the new things, the new who's, and speaking of PreSuasion Frontier, is I've got a friend in town who's, we've joked that he said, my life was really easy until you started to practice here, because he's been practicing since '97. And then I started in 2004, and he said, yeah, things are going great. And then Regan shows up, and, jokingly, we've had this kind of just this banter back and forth, and he's been a Go Wellness client. We've been in the same groups, but he's recently started the last 2 years acquiring these ambulatory surgical centers where he can do more complex procedures. And so we've actually partnered up with him. So now he's become one of the new anodyne clinics, and so we've gone from east-west to anodyne pain and wellness, and now we'll have capabilities. We've 10x just because of that who, not how concept. I said, I wonder what Scott. I wonder what he would think about us joining forces and collaborating. And so I see this as us controlling every aspect of the care from the very start. If somebody needs more complex procedures, we can take them through that. We're not doing surgeries yet, but we're doing some procedures under C-arm and fluoroscopy, and we can anesthetize our patients, because you know how the brain treatment is. It's not fun. But we can do just some light sedation, and it makes their experience so much safer and so much better. And there's just been a fun new source of energy that I've gotten out of that collaboration. It's been exciting.
Yeah, I think it's the way of the world right now that, I mean, first of all, if you think about it, competition was so much based on location. In other words, like you wanted to be the only, the only show in town.
Right.
It didn't matter what industry or product or service. You didn't like it when, his comment that you came into town, he had things going, and then the stranger came into town, and, the myth is there's going to be a shootout at OK Corral to figure out who's going to run the town.
Right.
But the whole point is that I think it's a bit of a lie historically that it was all about competition. In fact, there was a enormous amount of because collaboration and cooperation is just incredibly cheaper,
Right.
And the other thing is that people's notion of what they want in their life has expanded 10 times. I mean, when it was just about food and shelter and and safety and security, people, it was a very restricted marketplace. Okay, one big store, major store, mercantile store would handle most things, but people's notions of what they want in their life and what kind of services they want, what kind of knowledge, what kind of information they want, and just more and more wanting people who are much more skilled than they are doing the things that are really important for them and being willing to pay for it. I think there's been an explosion of different things that people consider to be important parts of their their movement forward as individuals, and also in terms of their lifestyle with their family and where they want to live. And Babs and I, when we got together, neither of us are work at home type of people. Fixing things and cleaning things and everything else. So we got together in the mid 80s, and we always had an attitude that when we're at home, we're going to treat it like we're staying at a luxury hotel. We used the Four Seasons, which is, is a classic kind of luxury hotel. And I said, if we were in a luxury hotel and we wanted something, how would it get done? And, the hotel would find somebody to do it. And I said, we're going to treat our home life the same way, that we're not going to do any more at home than we would if we were staying at a luxury hotel. So, food, cleaning, repairs, management, maintenance, it's all handled by other people.
And that's proven to be very successful. I mean, you've had nothing but growth in the last, what's that been, 40 years?
We started, actually, we're in as far as the company in its present form, 33. We're finishing our 32nd year right now. Yeah, okay. We're up, we're good role models for our clients. I mean, yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And so, as you look at I know one of your fitness goals, you burned 1,000 calories before breakfast. You did that for a while.
No, that's
is that still going?
I'll tell you what I did the past year, and I had started it before March 1st, so I go back to March 1st, so it's been 14 months now. And I really focused on muscle. And I said, is there an exercise, that a routine I could do? So I've always been big on aerobic, and I've worn now for about 6-7 years this, when I do exercise, there's a thing called the elevation training mask. It isn't actually, doesn't do anything to reproduce elevation, but what it does is it's got gauges where you can restrict the airflow.
Right.
Okay, and it's there's about it does it from being as easy as possible to being as difficult as possible. There's about a 12 12 clicks that get you there. And so I worked on it for about 2 or 3 years, and I got down. I'm down where the next click I'll be breathing rubber. So, and if somebody put it on right now, what I'm doing in the morning, they wouldn't be able to breathe. They'd panic, and about my lungs are really strong, and I get that tested out of what your intake ability is, and also what your push out ability. Being able to really exhale is really, really important, because you get this, you get the CO2 out of your lungs, and that allows oxygen to come in. So to get a lot of oxygen in your lungs, you got to get the CO2 out. So I've really worked on that. So what I do, I'll give you an example. Like yesterday, I did about 50 minutes, and I have a fast routine. And by the way, I wear a 30-pound weight vest too. So I've got my the restriction of my air. And so what I start off is a real fast, hard sprint on the elliptical. Okay, and then I'm doing it by heart rate. So I've got my monitor on. First thing I want to do right off the bat in the first minute, I want to be above 120. And then the next 50 minutes, I just work it up 125, 130, 35. And I have to get into the 150s. So about halfway through, I'm at 150s. And then I'm just maintaining for about 20 minutes in the 140, 150 area, which is, kind of steady. And but the other activities is squats. So I started last March, and I had free weights. So I'm doing 40 pounds in each hand. Okay, and I do, and in the course of the 50 minutes, I'll do 50 reps. I'll do 5 reps of 10 each. And now I'm up to 130. So I got 65 in each hand. So plus I've got 30-pound weight vest. So I'm lifting, I'm not sure you're lifting the 30 pounds in the same way, but it's up 150 pounds. And squats are great because there's about 8 different muscle groups that get worked out, and they're all in coordination with each other. So what I'm noticing is this tremendous trunk coordination I have between my legs and my shoulders and everything. But the other thing is your hands get really strong.
Oh yeah, your grip.
Oh, my grip is really strong. That's good for your heart. Actually, it's having a really, really strong grip is good for your heart. And then I do I have 2 stair walks. I do 2 stair walks, and then I do curls. I do curls with 40 pounds in each hand and everything like that. And I just keep repeating. And so yesterday in 50 minutes, I had 54 minutes in. My average heart rate was 139 for the 54 minutes. And that's a lot of calories. You're burning a lot of calories, but you have an afterburn that goes on for 2 or 3 hours with it. And the other thing is I do 12 hours of fasting at nighttime. So for my last meal, people say 14. I said, 14, I'll do 12.
Sure.
And so the combination of that 12 hours of not eating, and then and doing the exercise, and that I'm really in good shape. I'm really good. I have a lot of energy. Which to me, it's all about work energy.
Yeah.
At 77, your needs are simple.
You just need energy. You've got your time.
You just need energy. Yeah, that's the only thing you need. Yeah.
Yeah, you've freed up your time. You've got your time management in place, and now it's energy management.
Yeah, and I feel good. I mean, I feel good all the time, and I'll do 7-8 hours of Zoom some days, and people say, "Aren't you worn out?" And I said, "No." I said, "I waited 75 years for this." Yeah,
that's great.
But I would probably figure that my muscle may be up about 5 pounds. I haven't had a chance to do a body comp over the last year, but I would say I can feel it. It looks like it. And Babs says, "Boy, you're putting on a lot of muscle." but my weight hasn't gone up. My weight hasn't gone up.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Just transferring some fat into muscle.
yeah,
Nothing wrong with that. And squats are awesome for your testosterone and balance and coordination, all the things that you want to have healthy as you approach that 156 target. So
yeah, and I've had a couple blood tests over the last 4 or 5 months, and one mostly for Chicago. I have most of our regular health services are at the University Northwestern in Chicago. And one of them's an internist, another one is a hematologist. And they said, boy, your results are good. There's just no drop off in anything. So
good. Well, yeah, that's some habits we could all put in our lives. So I'm excited to see your next book. Your attention, your
well,
property.
that's the one. And the next book that's at the press right now is Zooming Ahead: The Mindsets You Need to Take Advantage of Zoom. And quite frankly, the people who are taking advantage of it are not making news. They're just taking advantage of it. So my feeling is that there's like this half billion people out here who just found this new capability, and they aren't telling anybody about their progress or their breakthroughs or success. They're just doing it. And so it's not being picked up by the mainstream media right now. I haven't seen anything about I bet this entire economy of 500 million people who are using it are incredibly productive, incredibly innovative, but it's not showing up in any of the usual places.
Right. It's kind of at that deceptive phase.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at what you've done in the last 14 months with your clinics and your network of clinics and that's all creativity and productivity, but it doesn't show up anywhere. There's no government measurements that actually show what you're actually doing. And I think it's the reason why you got this weird thing of unemployment. You got this weird thing of really depressed states. Some of the states are really depressed. And yet the stock market's going crazy.
Right.
The stock market. Well, the stock market is a bet on the future value of present stocks. That's what you're doing. And I feel that there's just money pouring into all sorts of new breakthrough type companies and technologies and everything, but nobody's saying anything about them. The ones who are doing it aren't talking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's innovation. When there's a free zone frontier, as you call it, that's when innovation can really happen. And then pretty soon the government will kind of catch up and start putting restrictions on, and then we'll pivot again.
I think it's going to be hard. I think there's a crisis in government because it's hard to measure. It's hard to measure the impact of a really great Zoom call.
It really is. And this call has been very impactful. So no one's going to measure it.
You got to catch up with me because you were just entering the Peptide Revolution the last time I was seeing. And I think everybody who watches this really, because this, I don't think many good things have come from behind the Iron Curtain, but peptides are definitely one really good thing that came from behind the Iron Curtain. They were doing it for all the wrong reasons, but when it came across and it got cleaned up and it got verified and everything, it turns out that this is a truly fundamental breakthrough.
Oh man, it's massive, and always experimenting with new peptides now. As you pointed out, I am a simplifier. I like to take the complex things, work with it on my own, see if it's going to be helpful by working with a few patients with these therapies, and then once I see the breakthrough, then other people get the word out. So peptides has still been at the forefront.
Can you give a simple? Because I'm going to send this. We'll get this video and we'll send it out to all of our coach clients. We'll get a connector to send it out. Can you just sort of position peptides, how people would be best to think about them right now?
Yeah, so peptides are just natural messengers that the body releases. Just like your cells have hormones that communicate from one cell to the other, one tissue to the other, your body also has peptide structures. So these are amino acid chains of 50 or fewer. And these amino acids, these little peptide structures, just go and they work on the genetics of the cell. So we can give you a peptide that mimics the same type of expression that your immune system mimics, like a thymosin alpha 1 or a thymosin beta 4. Same kind of messengers that your thymus gland is secreting. We can give you peptides to remind your pituitary to make more growth hormone. We can do peptides that get in there and work on the mitochondrial pathway. So they go in and they work on the surface side of the cell. So one peptide has about 1,000 different expressions that will emit. And so it's a multiplier, as you like to call them. I look at peptides as one of those amazing ways where you bypass the typical digestive routes, because most of them are injectables. But they go in and they just remind the cell how to communicate, and they get rid of a lot of the debris, whereas it used to take us 6 months to get that debris out of the way and the smog. And now peptides go in and clear things out in a matter of months, so a matter of weeks, I should say.
Yeah, and they can I just ask you a question? If you measure from the first time you got interested to, let's say you had a year of actually seeing the results of what the change in your thinking was, both about, what you can do, in your practice, but what the future of your practice looks like because of this new capability.
Well, I first saw
this is like a reverse. This is kind of like this is kind of a reverse R factor. If we were having this discussion with 3 years ago, what would you be saying then?
And what would you
be saying?
Yeah, so I would have been saying that these are all, they're too selective. They're only working on a symptom-based approach. They aren't regenerative enough. I kind of had a short-sighted version of what peptides can actually do, and I thought they might ramp up the body systems too much, where you'd have these adverse reactions. But the more I dove into it now, 3 years later, I'm realizing that these peptides are neuroprotective. They protect against cancer, against heart disease, against literally any chronic disease that takes us out.
The big thing for me is keeping the muscle up. Big is that I think I really function on how much oxygen I'm getting in and how much how much muscle energy I have. That's my big thing.
Well, and if you look at aging, and sarcopenia is what takes us out, and that's when you get insulin resistance, and then you get heart disease, kidney failure. And so, if you can keep your muscle mass up, there's nothing that can take you out. I mean, it's one of those predictive factors for longevity that a lot of people overlook. So, I think with peptides, one of the things I've realized is it's even the lethal dose. We've tried doing 1,000 times the prescribed dose, and there's no lethal dose that's ever been established. And so, I just look at it as kind of a way that we take our engines in. When we used to have gasoline run engines, now we're going otherwise. But yeah, you'd go in and you'd service the whole engine. You'd take off the heads. We used to clean the pistons, the cylinders, and we'd change the spark plugs, and then the engine would run better. That's all peptides are doing to our cells. And then our cells can use it so much more robust to build muscle, build brain health, keep our nerves nice and healthy. They can regulate your HPA axis, so the stress response. So it's been a fun breakthrough that I've seen.
Yeah. The one little thing that about this, but I've really been very faithful. I got my happy here, and
yes,
yeah. And this is a client of ours in Scottsdale by the name of Scott Donnell. And what it is, it's a mood regulator, and you have it on your iPhone. I finally found a use for my cell phone.
Yay!
I keep it charged up every day. I never had a reason for keeping it charged up. But you go on his site, and he has moods, and what these are is electromagnetic impulses.
Yeah.
And so what they do is that they actually will create inside of your body a stimulation that usually you would have to have a drug, or you'd have to have a pharmaceutical to give you that result. So he's done a really great job with it. And so he's got calm, relax, he's got alert, he's got focus, he's got one just for happy, just happy. He's got one for bedtime that you put it on about a half hour before you go to bed, and then he's got one for deep sleep. And when he started off, the longest period was an hour, and he's up to 8 hours now. So you can put on a certain signal. But I've been using it. I think people are different in their response to it. I mean, I'm very, very susceptible to that type of thing. And but what I'm noticing is that it's been terrific during the Zoom period, because I can put it on. But there's all sorts of breakthroughs. I mean, your peptides and what you're doing in your clinics, there's just so much going on, and people are creating new things. But the biggest thing is they're in contact with each other. It's the it's the networks of people with new ideas bouncing new ideas. I remember in 1987, I was in New York City, and the stock market crash. This was October of 1987. There was a stock market crash, and if you think about it, the morning that before the crash, the Dow was at 2,700. The Dow is at above 30,000 now, but the Dow was at 2,700, and that day it dropped by 900 points. The market had the stock exchanges had to move in to stop trading to keep it from going longer. So it lost a third or a quarter of its value that day. And so all the news media, the chattering class, were predicting doom and gloom, and they had Warren Buffett on. So this is Warren Buffett, 87. You're talking about Warren Buffett, and he's still active. And this is 34 years ago. This is Warren Buffett.
Wow.
And they said, "Well, Mr. Buffett, what do you think is going to happen now? I mean, is this the beginning of a depression?" He said, "Oh, no." He says, "It's just a little correction here." And he said, it's probably, he says, probably a lot of it is just that we have communication gaps, and we have information gaps, and the measurements that the government's using now are probably 10 years out of date, and things are happening that are really good that are not being counted, and things that used to be good aren't happening, so they think something's really bad. Okay.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah. And then he said, and they said, "Well, look, we're approaching the end of the century. We're approaching the end of the millennium." He says, I mean, and like in the year 2000, 13 years in the future, he says, "I mean, where do you think, will we recover?" And he says, "Oh, yeah, we'll recover." He says, I would say probably by 2000, the Dow will be at 10,000. And they said, 10,000? It's at 1,800. How could it? And he said, "Well, look at it this way." He says, most of the scientists who've ever been born are alive today. Most of the technicians, the engineers, the researchers, they're all alive today, and they're being connected. They're being connected electronically. So he said, how could it not be that people are just producing all sorts of new things that other people want to invest in? So I remember that, and on New Year's of 2000, the Dow was at 1,150. He was off. It was higher than he had admitted. And now we're 21 years later, and the whole world is comparing great ideas and great methods. And look at the speed with which the vaccine came on board.
Man, never seen anything like that. Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. Well, one thing I appreciate about you, Dan, is you're somebody who can distill this information and provide context like no one else I've ever seen. So I appreciate it, because it gives me the clarity that, there's going to be bumps in the road, but man, as long as we keep connecting with the right people, have these collaborations, the innovation will come. And And it's you've literally helped propel my career in ways that I couldn't have if I didn't have your structure. So
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Reagan, and it's always a treat. I check in with you every year, and we bring things up to date. But I think the peptide thing you're doing, I think a lot of people are going to want to know about this. So we're going to make sure that this that this goes out, and I'm sure you're going further afield with your teaching and with your coaching. Then Utah's a great place, but now Zoom goes everywhere. So we'll
everywhere.
make sure everybody can plug into what you're doing. And I see, when we look at our free zone program, the critical mass right in the middle. We have about 60 right now. As of today, we about 60 in the free zone, and I would say the critical mass of about 15 is in healthcare and things healthcare. So we're developing a really nice center to this whole thing, and everybody's doing something different. So it's great.
Yeah, I love that. Well, good. We've got a lot more we could talk about, but I really appreciate the time today.
Yeah, and I don't think I have my book to show it, but
yes.
Who Not How is really the cover says it all.
That's the best
as my worst review said, why do you have to read the book? The cover tells you everything you need to know. And I said, well, there you go.
That's like our mountains here. Snowbird is very steep, and so they put their negative reviews on billboards like, oh, my legs were burning, the powder was too deep, my kids were exhausted by noon, just like funny things like that.
Never been so excited in my life.
yeah, exactly. So get Who Not How. It's been a phenomenal, my entire team loves that book, and so we're trying to bypass the how do we do it and get in the complexity and just go to who can do that. And it's been a game changer for us. So Dan, thanks for all the wisdom you share and for being a part of our community here.
Thank you, Reagan. Yeah.
Dan, it's so nice to have you back on the show.
Thank you all so much for joining us today for the podcast, Your Healthy Self. That was the end of our interview Reagan had with his mentor and the amazing Dan Sullivan, who is turning 77 this year. So we hope you enjoyed that, and please join us same time, same place next Thursday, always 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time for our next guest lecture. It will be live. It will not be a recording next week. We look forward to seeing you then. Take care.